Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. In my review of Razing of Westerland, which you can catch here, I promised I would go into a little bit more depth on the Path of Glory campaign, and that's what we're going to do in this video.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club, your event or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
The full review of this book was getting on towards 50 minutes or so. While I think I gave a pretty good account of what to expect from the Path of Glory campaign, I think it's really cool. It has loads of different possibilities, and I love narrative and campaigns and stuff like that. And quite a few of you have asked for more detail, and I promised in that video that I would give you a bit more detail. So I thought we'd go through it again, spend a little bit more time on it, and then give you some of the ideas that I have that I might use myself for using some of the other publications to really add to it and flesh it out. I mentioned in the full review that Path of Glory isn't new, and then this version here for Warhammer Fantasy, it mentions that its inspiration was right back to the Realm of Chaos books, when you have rules for developing your Chaos warbands and building their mutations, and this was an expansion on that and an adjustment inspired by Warhammer Skirmish as well, which I may refer to a little bit later in the video. And more recently there have been a number of Path to Glory versions for Age of Sigmar, of which a brand new one is going up for pre-order very soon. I think if you're watching this video on the week of release, the Saturday is the pre-order for the latest Age of Sigmar version, and I think there's different versions and they do different things, but essentially they're based around narrative leaning campaigns where you build and grow your forces, and that's it in its essence. As part of this discussion, I'm going to be referring to and looking at content found in previous Arcane journals. We've got Dawn of the Storm Dragon and War of Cetra's Fury, some of which relate directly to the Path of Glory campaign, and some which is tangentially, I think, really useful. We may even find some useful elements in the match play guide as well. But the core rules to Path of Glory, of course, are in the Razing of Westerland, the latest Arcane journal. So we're going to go through the rules again now, and it's slightly more depth than I did in my review. And then I want to talk about what we can add to it if you want to make it even more in depth and a little bit more crunchy for the really fun narrative campaign. Reading straight from the book here, in a Warhammer the Old World Path to Glory campaign, the participants start with small forces which they add to over a number of weeks or months, turning a modestly sized warband into a mighty and all-conquering war host. And in its essence, that's exactly what the campaign has in mind, that you start with small forces and you build towards a full army. And that could be perfect for so many different reasons. The examples that it really leans into here is starting new players, allowing them to slowly learn the game while building their forces, rather than worrying about having to paint a whole army before they can get their first games in. And a lot of this is quite logical and things that we do. I remember doing Escalation campaigns in 7th edition and 8th edition at my local club at the time, the Cheltenham War Chiefs. One was a middle edition thing that just set up by one of the club members, and the other one was when 8th edition started. It was about getting a mixture of veterans and newer players together, starting afresh with a new army, learning the game as we go, or learning the edition, and it's just brilliant fun. It's nothing new, but having it written down in the book with some guidelines there is just a really nice way of getting people thinking about it and playing this kind of Warhammer. I also think the format ticks a lot of different boxes for different kinds of players. Some people love the narrative elements, love the ideas that your units and your characters can pick up experience points and change and develop as they go and build that narrative into the story. Some people would like to see it as a bit of a painting checklist to build towards the 2,000 point army that they've probably got laid out to maybe play some events later on in the year. Now it doesn't matter, because they can still take part and enjoy the fun of the campaign as they go, but their end goal is the pressure to keep them painting over those months. And some people will want both sides of that. So you can really bring narrative only players together, very casual players together, and people that maybe want to play a more serious match play or even tournament style of Warhammer can do that more slowly as they're collecting and painting their forces. The other clear difference, the Path to Glory in this edition of the game versus what we saw in the first example I gave you back in 6th edition, I believe, is that was all based around chaos, Path to Glory, the chaos idea, part of the story that's in this book, the narrative. This is designed to work with any army, whether you're an Orc and Goblin player, which is the example they give in the book, or it doesn't matter what faction, you can take part in the Path to Glory campaign and it works the same way. Your XP will be spent on things to boost your units, boost your characters. It doesn't necessarily need to be a chaos trait or mark or something like that. And back to the book, we talked a little bit about setting up the campaign and the overseer. And the overseer is just the person who is organising it and running the campaign. If that is something you're playing in your garage and there's maybe 2 or 3 of you, you may even share that role. If it's someone at a club, it's usually the person whose idea it is to set it up and the drive to start it and to get people involved. It will vary. And maybe it's a weekend campaign and it's something that people have sold tickets for, and you turn up and you have a pre-painted force and you build it that way, and your army list will change slightly and your painting's already done. And so it's not quite the way that it's designed in terms of getting you to paint your armies as you go, but you could still do that as well. So there's loads of different possibilities, different ways of running it, and different people running the events. And I suppose that leads into that next session about the campaign goals. What is the goal? Is the goal to reach a 2,000 point or 2,500 point army? Is the goal to run a narrative campaign weekend? Is the goal to get new players involved? It doesn't really matter how quickly they get there. Is it all of those things? Is it to run a narrative campaign and your existing players, but you just want to start new armies, or even just use existing ones and add new units, and you just want to build a story and a narrative towards a big battle or something? So many reasons for using this. You just make it work for you. The rules as they're laid out in this book then goes on to make some suggestions about campaign phases. That's kind of rounds, maybe, depending on which way you want to look at it, number of weeks, or maybe depends how often your club meets up or how often you can get together with your friends. Gives examples at 2 to 6 weeks here, but again, it really depends on your situation. And rather than leave it totally vague, I'm guessing they're giving some examples, but it really is up to the players how you run this. If you live a long way away from each other and you get together 3 or 4 times a year, then maybe it's a quarterly meetup or something. You could still run a Path to Glory campaign in that way if you wanted to. The key part to begin the campaign is to start at 500 points and play games using the Battle March rules found in the War of Cetra's Fury. Really fantastic, slightly slimmed down version of the game in terms of restrictions of what you can take for playing games of Warhammer, the Old World, at 500 to 750 points. And if you don't have a copy of this book, then you won't know what they're getting at here. And it is still Warhammer, the Old World. They're not changing the core rules, but there are a few adjustments in there that make the game work better at the smaller points level. Now, I think this is important. At this stage of Warhammer the Old World, there's no Warhammer the Old World skirmish. However, those rules do exist in 6th edition, so you could convert them to work with Warhammer the Old World and maybe even start with a smaller points level if you wanted to. And that's maybe some of the expansion ideas that we'll come to a little bit later in the video. But I think starting at 500 points is a good level. It's a manageable amount for players to collect to. You're still playing a rank and flank version of the game, which many people coming to Warhammer the Old World will choose it because of that. So I think it's probably the safest way to start, as they've listed in the book, at those 500 points. And then it's up to you how you run the campaign, what the next level is. Is it 750, so you have another Battle March level game? Maybe it's the second round at 500 points, depending on how much people have painted. Really design it to match you and to the narrative that you want to play. Maybe I'll have a round at 500, a round at 750, and then you'll go up to 1,000. 1,500, 2,000. That seems a nice way of doing it. Building up the points levels gives people a nice achievable chunks to do, and then you just got to work out how many weeks in between the people in your group need to achieve that, to achieve what it takes to paint. And it will vary. Some people, if they've got an ogre army or something, might not have many models to paint. If you're painting night goblins or something, you might need a little bit more time to paint a few more. So back to the book again now, and we have rewards of valor. At the end of the campaign, the overseer should gather the participants together and give out awards. How many awards are given and the achievements they recognise should be determined by the overseer, but the following are highly recommended. We've got Champion of Champions, so awarded to the participant with the most campaign points, and Best Army, awarded to the participant with the best painted or most thematic army as voted by the participants. And again, this is really up to you whether you want to do that. This is a little bit sort of tournament event style going into the thing here. So it really depends. If you're doing that in your garage and there's only 3 of you, you might not do that. The whole nature of running the campaign would be enjoying the campaign. It might feel a little bit odd, 3 or 4 of you voting on who was the best painted out of that. Maybe do it, who knows. But if you're running it in a club and there's 10 of you or something, that could be a really fun thing to do. So again, I'd say that it's completely optional whether you do that, but it's a fun thing to do and gives people an extra goal to go for. The rules outlined in the book then go on to give an idea of how you play your battles, or how often you should play your battles, and what points you get for them. And again, a lot of this is down to the overseer to decide how many games you play in each round. And there's campaign points as well here, and you can see 3 CPs for a crushing victory, 2 for a victory, 1 for a draw, 0 for a loss there. And that you should probably play 1 scoring game minimum per round, but there is room for playing other extra games within it if you want, but maybe they're non-scoring. So if you've got eager players who want to play extra games during the week, or maybe you meet up at club once a month for this, but some players can go 3 times a month and they can still play extra games with their 500 points or their 700 points. They're probably getting extra practice, but it's non-scoring practice. Of course, that's all covered there in games per phase. And then you have the colours for victory, where you can gain extra CPs for playing fully painted each round, and if the goal is to have a fully painted army, then this is perfect. And that's the most basic part of the campaign. Super simple, and you could just run it like that if you want to keep it really simple. If it's purely a painting exercise at your club to get people to build towards a 2,000 point army, of course you can add the next layer, which is adding some extra spice to your list by allowing players to gain experience points for their units and their characters, giving them bonuses and things throughout the journey and the games and each round that they play. So let's go back to the book and have a quick whiz through all of those areas. So first up, we have veteran abilities. Those that survive the fury of battle quickly become experienced warriors. To represent this, units gain experience points, or XP, during the course of the Warhammer the Old World Path to Glory campaign. Any unit whose troop type is infantry or cavalry, but not swarms or beasts, that is not fleeing at the end of the game, earns 1 XP if it survived the game without being reduced to less than 50% of its starting unit strength, 1 XP per trophy of war it captured or an enemy unit is destroyed during the game. So a little bit of counting up at the end of the games, making sure that you're tracking what you've killed and how much is left. A unit may then spend its XP after any game by rolling on the table below and adding its current XP to the result. Once the unit has rolled on the table, it's reduced to 0 XP, so you're spending those points. And there's your veteran abilities table. So 2 to 5 reluctant warriors. Failing to learn from its experiences, the unit does not gain a veteran ability, but neither is it reduced to 0 XP, so you still keep your points. Grizzled veterans, the unit permanently improves its leadership characteristic by 1 to a maximum of 10. If the unit's leadership is 10, treat this result as a roll of 2 to 6. 9 to 10 is experienced warriors. Once per game, the unit may re-roll any rolls to hit of a natural 1. If the unit rolls this upgrade again, it scores a second re-roll. 11 to 12 weapon masters, the unit permanently improves either its weapon skill or ballistic skill by characteristic by 1, chosen by the controlling player, to a maximum of 10. 13 to 14 is fighting formation, the unit permanently improves its maximum rank bonus determined by its troop type by 1 to a maximum of +4. And then 15 plus spoils of war, the unit permanently improves the armor piercing characteristic of one of its weapons by 1, chosen by the controlling player, to a maximum of -5. So that's really funny. Your units hang around, stay alive, perform well, capturing things, killing things. They're likely to get better because of it, as veterans would do with experience. But then we move on to battlefield losses. No matter how seasoned the battle-hardened members of a veteran unit become, no one is safe upon the battlefields of the old world. Casualties do happen and units suffer losses, and whilst fallen warriors can often be replaced through careful selection of new recruits, a regiment that suffers significant losses might never recover. To represent this, if a unit with 1 or more veteran upgrades is reduced below 25% of its starting unit strength, or is destroyed, or flees the battlefield, roll a d6 at the end of the game. Battlefield losses table. D6 result. 1 to 3 unsurmountable losses. The unit is too badly mauled to recover and loses all of its veteran abilities, along with any unspent XP. 4 terrible losses. The unit will survive, but many of its veteran members are replaced by untested new recruits. The unit loses 1 veteran ability, chosen by the controlling player. 5 is mauled. Despite having received a mauling from the foe, the unit's casualties recover quickly after the battle. And 6, lesson learned. In the aftermath of the brutal battle, the recovering unit members reflect upon their experiences. The unit gains 1 XP. And that's all pretty logical, straightforward stuff. Nice and simple. I love a good table like this that works really simply but tells a narrative tale as well and works with the game and makes a lot of sense. It doesn't affect what you're painting. You're not being forced to add different weapons onto your units. You're just rewarding stuff that happens in game, having a lot of fun while building your armies up, which is totally the point of this whole thing. And then we move on to fresh blood. Units can increase the size during the course of Warhammer the Old World Path to Glory campaign. Of course, you're building your army up from 500 maybe up to 2,000 points, so you want to change the makeup of your units. So should a unit strength of a unit with 1 or more veteran upgrades increase by 5 or more between 2 campaign phases, it will retain its upgrades but will lose D3 unspent XP it has. And again, this reflects you're building your armies, the army's growing, so there's a real narrative reason why maybe that veteran ability area gets diluted slightly as new recruits are born to the army. So it makes sense narratively and also makes sense with you at home painting more miniatures ready for your next game, which is really good fun. The next section is seasoned commanders. Whilst regiments gain experience and become seasoned veterans, so too can the mighty warriors and cunning mages that command them. As with units, this is represented by experience points, XP, which characters gain during the course of Warhammer the Old World Path to Glory campaign. 1 XP for surviving the game, 1 XP per enemy character slain per trophy of war captured, or enemy unit destroyed during the game by the character or unit they have joined. In addition, the army's general earns 1 XP if their army won the game. A character may spend their XP after any game by rolling on the table below and adding their current XP to the result. Once a character is rolled on the table, they reduce to 0 XP, so just the same way as it works for units. Seasoned Commander table. 2 to 6, Prideful Braggart. Filled with pride and arrogance, the character does not gain a veteran ability, but neither are they reduced to 0 XP. 7 to 11, Grizzled Veteran. The character permanently improves their leadership characteristic by 1 to a maximum of 10. 12 to 14 is Weapon Master. The character permanently improves its weapon skill or ballistic skill characteristic by 1, chosen by the controlling player to a maximum of 10. And 15 plus, the Spoils of War. The character permanently improves the armor piercing characteristic of one of their weapons by 1, chosen by the controlling player to a maximum of -5. And this completely mirrors what happens with the units, which makes sense, but it's nice that the characters are able to do this as well. After that, there's a section on promotion or death, and it's there to reflect that as your army changes and your list changes from round to round, so maybe you've gone from 750 up to 1,000 points, maybe you want your character to be at a higher level and you're paying more points for them, which is fine. That character's kind of gained its own experience and you've paid the points for it, and you've got the increased stat line to go with it and any abilities that goes with that. However, they don't then take their XP with them. The final section is death and dishonor. So by contrast, some characters are doomed to meet an ignominious fate upon the battlefield. To represent this, if a character with 1 or more veteran upgrades is slain or they flee the battlefield, roll a d6 at the end of the game. And you're rolling on the death and dishonor table. 1 to 3 dead, the character is slain and loses all their veteran abilities along with any unspent XP. 4 to 5 badly wounded, the character survives but barely and loses 1 veteran ability chosen by the controlling player. Or 6, lesson learned, the character gains some valuable insight into the perils of battle. And that's fun. You're playing the next round, you're going to be using that miniature and potentially that character's name again. Maybe you'll change the name if you want to be super narrative about it. But there is some reflection within the campaign that any experience that they have won has now gone, and it's fun to have a little table in there to do that. I think all of those tables are super simple, but they're good and they'll work just fine. There's nothing overcomplicated there, but it has a real effect in game, but it doesn't really mess up either you building and painting your army. Sometimes with a campaign, you have an end goal in mind, and maybe you do have that 2,000 point list in mind, and you're trying to play within that, and the narrative takes you another way. This, I feel, is enough story there if you want it to be there. However, if you're a character or a player who's not really into that side quite as much as the next person, then you can still have some fun taking part in this campaign, having the rules buffs and debuffs, but it not really affecting you narratively in the same way, or affecting what you're painting or building to get to that 2,000 point level. So I think it works perfectly for all types of gamers who are taking part within the campaign. Now, there are 3 scenarios in this book which are designed for use in the Path to Glory campaign. I'm not going to read them through to you word for word. I don't think it's important for what I'm trying to achieve with this video in terms of talking about how to make the most out of a Path to Glory campaign. But I will give you a very basic overview of each and give you some very, very basic thoughts on it. But I want to go on and talk about some more stuff afterwards. First of all, we have War in the Shadowlands, and it's a 500 point scenario using the Battle March rules and a Battle March size table, which is 30 by 44 inches. If you're not aware of a Battle March, I will point you towards my review of the War of Setch's Fury, but I've also got another video where I talk a lot about Battle March and how good it is and some of the things that you can do with it as well. So go and check those out if you're unaware of it. But it's basically that simplified version of Warhammer the Old World with some small adjustments to your army selection, mostly for how you play the games on the smaller table size. But I'm not going to go through all the deployment and all of the scenarios and special rules. It will be perfect to play Warriors of Chaos against Warriors of Chaos, but the idea really is that this could work between any 2 armies, and it's perfect scenario to use for your Path to Glory campaigns. But you don't have to, and we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. The next one is looting and pillaging. This is a slightly larger battle if you want it to be, so 500 to 750, so it could be your second round game, again played using Battle March on the Battle March size table. Lots of fun ideas in there. Some of the scenario rules are taken from the things we saw in the match play guide, and again I'm not going to read it all to you word for word, but really good fun, will work with any 2 armies. It's very narrative focused, and it'll be great if you want an out the book scenario to use for running Battle March. This will be your perfect round 2 scenario. And then we have Hallowed Ground, and this is yet another Battle March scenario, 500 to 750 points using the Battle March rules, 30 by 44 table, etc. as well. Perfect for one of your earlier rounds within your Path to Glory campaign. Now, you can absolutely come up with your own scenarios. You can have your basic scenarios from the rulebook or anything from the match play guide as well. These are all nice, they're all fun, all have narrative elements to them. I think they are brilliant for anyone to use. If you are running it for brand new players or have a number of brand new players taking part in the Path to Glory campaign and they're trying to learn the rules as part of this as well, then I would try to run multiple rounds at this point, maybe 2 at 500 points so people are really learning the rules as they go, and the third round maybe at 750, maybe even 2 at 750, and then move up to the 1,000 points, 1,500 and then 2,000. I think you'll learn more with less stuff going on the table, and it's perfect. If you are an experienced player and you're painting quicker and your group is painting quick, you might only want to go 500, 750, 1,000, blah, 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 and so on. So pick and choose what you want. It's nice to have them in there. They are designed to work with the Path to Glory, and it says it at the bottom of the page, but I think they are just fun Battle March scenarios, really, and it's really nice to see these books include them in there. So I think that's really good in itself, and I'm glad that they didn't just limit it to a rewrite of the original idea of keeping it within Chaos Warriors and their path to glory with the Chaos Gods. I'm glad it's widened out to a campaign that can be used for players of any faction. I think that's great. Great for beginners, great for people having fun, as I've already said. And I also waved these around at the beginning of the video as well. So I think these are a perfect companion to that. I think you need Battle March, so that goes with it. And I think there's some fun things in the Dawn of the Storm Dragon as well. If you really love your narrative campaigns and want to build on them even more, I think there's some really fun stuff in this if you've got it. There's lots of sections on the war in Westerland, and what we had with that was some narrative, of course, to do with the war in Westerland, but then we had some random terrain generators and some scatter terrain placement, and then rules for linear features with rivers and fords and fast-flowing rivers and placing linear terrain and buildings and how to occupy buildings and shooting from them and assaulting buildings. And then you had these lovely generators that you could roll up terrain, which, while they're focused around the wasteland and focused around the Shadowlands, which is, some of it is relevant for the current stuff, I also believe that it's very easy to take these as inspiration and adjust them and change them to any area of the old world and beyond if you wanted to. So you could change your saltwater bogs to quicksand or something if you really, really wanted. My point is really, if you take the pages of the terrain generation and all the rules stuff, all the softer stuff that you might not see at a match play game or event or tournament, because it adds a little bit too many layers and adds time and adds complication, but that you might want to play at home or in your club as part of a more narrative campaign, add those to Battle March, add those to Path of Glory, and you start to get towards nearly a whole book's worth of pages that are very narrative based and campaign, and maybe it'd be lovely to see them in the future compiled into an Arcane journal, narrative play or campaign book or something like that. But needless to say, you don't need that because you've got them all. You just have to buy multiple books or source them however way you source them, borrow your friends, whatever it happens to be. But I would really lean into these if you've got them and you want to build a really fun narrative and lots of extra stuff outside of the XP for your veterans, outside of the XP for your units, and building those armies up. If you want it to last a little bit longer, spend a little bit longer at each stage, have loads of fun with the scenarios and the terrain as well. Make your own scenarios or use the existing ones and adjust them, but use the fun stuff in here. Add a game where you're fighting in a town or something as well, especially if it's lower points level. Be really fun. You can use all the building rules as well, would just be really great. And there's plenty you can do from further afield as well. And a lot of that for me is looking back at older editions. And I mentioned already Warhammer Skirmish. There's rules in the back of the 6th edition rulebook, but there was also sort of an expansion on that was released as a booklet. It was in White Dwarfs and things as well. And it's full of lots of fun scenario ideas. And I will be showing some of them on the screen now so you get a little bit of an idea. But if you're looking for scenario ideas at lower points levels for your Battle March, you don't want to use the ones in the book. Many of these scenarios can be adapted because they're based for a small points game. So for 500, even 750, adapted versions of these will work just fine. There's so little there that makes it particularly edition specific, and anything that is, you can just change or adjust it. And again, if you're an overseer or someone running one of these campaigns and you want to make it slightly different, slightly longer, do look at things like this as examples. And if you want to go really wild, you could play skirmish games first. I'm pretty confident, having played around with bits at home, that the skirmish rules from 6th edition can be adapted to Warhammer the Old World as well. Again, there's no reason why you couldn't play a 200 point aside skirmish game where each miniature, using your normal statistic, becomes an individual unit by itself. So you just treat it that way. You don't have to rewrite the whole rules, and you can use some of these skirmish scenarios, and maybe you do that before your 500 point level. And that might not be the way if you do it if your goal is to get to 2,000 points. That might be what you do with a group of friends if you want a really fun in-depth narrative campaign. Maybe you could link that to your Warhammer the Old World roleplay game if you're into those kind of things as well. Do some roleplay, play a skirmish game, and then build that into a 500 point battle, and so on and so on. So if you want pure narrative and you really want to build a fun campaign, Path to Glory will work with that as well, and you can definitely use all of these older resources to do it. And that's it. That's your starting point of ideas. Hopefully a slightly more in-depth look at the Path to Glory campaign, as opposed to the one that I did in my review, which I had to cover everything else as well in the whole book. So do check out that video if you haven't already and you want to hear my thoughts on the whole book, not just the rules. But hopefully that's giving you an idea of what I think of the Path to Glory things. I think it's really simple, but elegantly simple and fun. And I'm looking forward to playing around with it and expanding on it and using some of the ideas that I've already shared with you. And I'm hoping there'll be more rules in future Arcane journals that we can do more expansion. So we have those terrain generators. There might be more rules in future. I still hope we'll get some siege rules at some point in the future. Well, maybe a campaign could lead to a big siege in the future and you could use the siege rules. And I think the way the Arcane journals are going at the moment, and we're getting these different pockets of rules, there's no reason why we shouldn't expect something more in a future Arcane journal that we could add to Path to Glory campaigns. So let me know in the comments below what you think of that, any ideas you have yourself. There's other things from previous editions that I've not mentioned that I should be looking at, or you can share with other people as well so they can go and look at it. It'd be great. Pop those in the comments as well. So if you have enjoyed the video, Please do give it that like, drop those comments as mentioned, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. You don't want to miss out on future videos. Got a painting video coming up very soon on all those brand new Marauders, so something to look forward to there. And some other things in the works very, very soon afterwards as well, which might be Warhammer the Old World adjacent also. So definitely want to keep in touch and have a look out for those videos. Lots of exciting things planned in the future. So do subscribe if you haven't already. Please check out all the links in my video description. They're a great way of supporting me. The most important one being my Patreon, because it really is the best way of supporting me. And thank you to all my existing patrons who support me. I love making these videos, but they do take time, and a little bit of money back towards the time that I'm doing it just helps me and able to keep me making these videos, because without that support I'm not sure I would be able to make anywhere near as much. Definitely not the 2 or 3 a week that I'm making at the moment. It might be more like 1 a fortnight or something. So I really appreciate it. So please do check that out, and if you're able to support me, I very much appreciate it. Check out all the other links as well. There's the Warhammer merch store at the moment, which is great for Christmas presents and things, and I get a little kickback if you purchase after using the affiliate link in the video description. And do check out the channel sponsor Counterattack Bases as well. But thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll catch you soon.